Marlon Brando's lost film, The Secret Hollywood is Hiding. What if I told you that Marlon Brando's final film was deliberately hidden? Not because it was bad, but because it exposed Hollywood's darkest secrets. According to some sources, Brando decided to tell the true story of his own life in this film, and that was extremely dangerous. Studio executives, famous names, even some political figures pressured to prevent this project from being released. The film was completed, edited, but never shown. So was it really like that? Or was this just disrespect shown to an aging genius? By the end of this video, you decide. But first, if you're curious about the secrets Hollywood hides, the mysterious corners of cinema history, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. Because what I'm about to reveal today isn't just a lost film story. In the fall of 1996, a small production company in Los Angeles began working on an unusual project. Very little was known about the project, and crew members had signed strict confidentiality agreements. But one name surprised everyone. Marlon Brando, the legendary actor, then 62 years old, had appeared in a few small roles in recent years and had almost retreated into seclusion. With his weight exceeding 160 kilos, health problems, and broken relationship with Hollywood, he was no longer what he used to be. So why did this man suddenly agree to take part in a mysterious independent film project? The first clue lies right here, because this film was his own story. The working title of the project was Tears and Shadows, but this name was never officially used anywhere. According to some sources, Brando himself wrote the script, or at least outlined its main framework. The film was about an aging Hollywood star confronting his past, exposing the manipulations, abuses, and dirty secrets he encountered throughout his career. Brando was said to be involved in this project, not only as an actor, but also as a co-producer. However, just 2 weeks after filming began, strange things started happening. Set visits were banned, crew members were prohibited from using phones and cameras, and some scenes were filmed entirely behind closed doors. Was this just a film set, or was something else going on? Donald Peterman, a cinematographer who was one of Brando's close collaborators, shared very limited information about the project in an interview years later. Peterman said Marlon was very determined at that time. He wanted to tell everything. But some people didn't like it at all. This vague statement was the first concrete clue as to why the project was shelved. So what exactly did Brando want to tell? It was claimed that some scenes in the film openly addressed the casting couch culture in Hollywood, the sexual pressures that producers put on young actors. Brando himself had faced such situations as a young actor and had never fully talked about it. But in this film, now an old man with nothing left to lose, he wanted to spill all the truths. And here's where the story gets interesting, because while filming continued, sudden interest in the project began. Major studios and producers, who normally paid little attention to small independent films, suddenly wanted to learn the details of this project. According to some rumors, a famous producer had a private meeting with Brando and offered him money to stop the film. Brando rejected this offer. According to another rumor, the film's director mysteriously left the project and was replaced by someone Brando trusted. These changes caused the project to become increasingly controlled and secretive. In the spring of 1997, filming was officially completed. The 62 days of filming produced approximately 120 hours of raw footage. Post-production began, and Brando was said to have set up his own editing room and closely monitored the film's assembly. But right at this point, all news about the project ceased. No studio announcements were made, no festival submissions occurred, no promotional materials were released. The film fell into silence as if it had never existed. So what happened since then? Where is the film? And most importantly, why was it never shown? To answer these questions, we need to look at Hollywood's dark side, secret agreements, and silenced voices. Because Brando's lost film wasn't just a work of art, it was also a threat, a confession, and perhaps revenge. The first concrete evidence proving the film's existence emerged in 2004 after Brando's death. At an auction where Brando's personal belongings were put up for sale, a script copy titled Tears and Shadows was found. The script was 130 pages long and contained notes in Brando's handwriting. The collector who purchased the script stated that the content was extremely disturbing and carried very clear parallels from Brando's real life. The script told the story of an aging actor who returns to his youth years in Hollywood, recounting the harassment, manipulations, and how his career was shaped by dirty games. But the most striking part was that the characters in the script had names very similar to real names. In some scenes, the behaviors of famous producers and directors were clearly depicted. This wasn't just fiction, it was almost an exposé, but the script was just the beginning. In 2008, during a warehouse clearance operation in Los Angeles, dozens of film reels believed to belong to Brando were found. Among the reels were boxes labeled Tears and Shadows. However, the production company that seized these boxes never shared the content with the public. According to rumors, some parts of the film were digitized and shown to a very limited audience. Among these viewers were legal consultants, former studio executives, and a limited number of journalists. One of those who watched the film, a film critic who did not want to reveal his identity, wrote the following on a forum: "Watching Brando's film is like descending into the depths of a man's soul, but it's also like seeing how ugly Hollywood can be. Some scenes are so explicit that I realized major studios would never allow this. So was this film really that dangerous, or was it just an exaggerated legend?" To answer this question, we need to look at Brando's life, and especially the early years of his career, because the events he experienced in those years formed the foundation of this film. When Marlon Brando started his career as a theater actor in New York in the late 1940s, he was only 23 years old, young, handsome, and extraordinarily talented. But the Broadway world of that era wasn't as clean as we know it today. Powerful producers, directors, and theater owners had great control over young actors. Brando spoke very sparingly about this period in a few interviews, but some of his statements were quite striking. He once said, "Broadway wanted to turn me into a commodity, not an actor." In another interview, he said, "To be successful, sometimes you have to sacrifice a lot of yourself. I sacrificed a lot." These vague but loaded statements hinted at what kind of pressures Brando faced at a young age. When he moved to Hollywood, things got even worse. Brando made his big breakthrough with the film A Streetcar Named Desire in '51 and suddenly became a star. But this stardom came with a great price. Studios wanted to control him, producers wanted to manage his image, and the press was curious about his private life. Brando hated this control. He was rude in interviews, clashed with studio executives, and openly criticized Hollywood's fake world. This attitude made him both a beloved and dangerous figure. Because Brando wasn't just an actor, he was also an activist and a rebel who questioned how the system worked, and Tears and Shadows was designed as the most mature form of this rebellion. Brando, now old and believing he had nothing left to lose, wanted to tell all the truths. In the film's script, one scene was particularly striking. The aging actor returns to his younger self and recounts a disturbing scene that took place in a producer's office. In this scene, the producer explicitly makes a sexual proposition to the young actor and says his career will end if he doesn't accept. In the script's notes, Brando had written, "This scene is from my real life. This wasn't just fiction, it was a confession." But what Brando told wasn't just his own story. Other scenes in the film addressed drug use in Hollywood, bribery scandals, and even the dark secrets of some famous names. In the script, there were characters who didn't have real names, but clearly referenced specific people. For example, a producer named Mr. W closely resembled a well-known studio head in real life. A female actress named Star K referenced a famous name who died tragically. Such references took the film beyond being just a personal story and turned it into an accusation against all of Hollywood, and that's exactly why the film was never shown, because if it had been shown, Hollywood's most powerful names would have faced a major scandal. Some legal consultants said that if the film were released, dozens of libel lawsuits could be filed. Brando's production company couldn't take this risk and quietly shelved the project. But Brando didn't agree with this. According to rumors, he hid copies of the film and wanted them to be revealed after his death. But that didn't happen either, because after Brando's death, the lawyers and family members managing his estate feared that such a scandal could tarnish Brando's name. As a result, the film is still hidden somewhere and will most likely never be shown. But the story doesn't end here, because some people have seen small fragments of the film and talked about them. In 2012, a film festival organizer anonymously published a blog post. In the post, he wrote that he watched a few minutes of montage from Brando's lost film, and that it was one of the bravest cinema moments he had ever seen. The organizer wrote, "Marlon wasn't just an actor there, he was a prophet, an exposer. In front of the camera, he was airing all of Hollywood's dirty laundry, but at the same time, he was also showing his own fragility, regrets, and pain. This was an unprecedented performance in cinema history." This post spread rapidly on the internet, and the legend of Brando's lost film came to the agenda again. But this legend wasn't just a story that attracted the curiosity of Brando fans. It also brought up a deep question about how Hollywood works. If a film is too dangerous to tell the truth, is it right to hide this film? Or should artistic freedom be above everything? This question is still being debated today, and Brando's lost film is at the very center of this debate. So where is the film really? There's no definitive answer to this question, but there are some clues. First, Brando's personal archive was distributed among different collectors and institutions after his death.
Some of these archives were donated to a private cinema museum in Los Angeles. However, the museum did not make the materials related to Brando's filmography publicly available. Second, the small company that produced the film went bankrupt in '99, and its assets were sold to another company. What this company did with Brando's film is unknown. Third, some rumors claim that digital copies of the film are circulating on the dark web, but these claims have never been verified and are most likely just internet legends. But perhaps the most interesting clue came from writer Bud Schulberg, one of Brando's close friends. In an interview in 2004, Schulberg said that Brando showed him a copy of the film. Schulberg said, "Marlon showed me the film, and at the end he said, 'This film should be shown after I'm gone.' But there must be someone brave enough to do it, because this film is like a bomb." Schulberg didn't give many details about the film's content, but he added, Marlon wasn't just telling his own story there. He was telling the entire history of Hollywood, all its ugliness. And in doing so, he was also sacrificing himself. These statements explain why the film is so important. Because Brando wasn't just an actor, he was also a witness. As someone who saw, lived, and suffered through what happened during Hollywood's golden age, his story wasn't just a personal drama, but also a historical document. And this document is still hidden somewhere. But perhaps the biggest question is, should this film really be shown? Some say Brando's wish should be fulfilled, and the truth should come out. Others claim that showing the film would only lead to more pain and scandal, harming both Brando's legacy and others. Finding a balance between these two views is very difficult, because the line between artistic freedom and personal privacy is always unclear. Another important point is how much of the film's content is real, how much is exaggerated or dramatized. Throughout his life, Brando was an actor who liked to blur the line between reality and fiction. In interviews, he sometimes distorted the truth, sometimes told completely made-up stories. So was the film Tears and Shadows like that too? Or was Brando really telling everything as it was this time? To know the answer to this question, you need to watch the film. But that's not possible right now. Still, the film's existence and story tell us a lot about how Hollywood works. Because if a film can be suppressed just because of its content, it shows how fragile and how secretive the system is. For years, Hollywood has been promoted as the world of bright stars, big productions, and dreamlike stories. But it's also the world of shadows, secrets, and silenced voices. Brando's lost film represents a truth hidden in the deepest of these shadows. And perhaps the fact that the film will never be shown makes its legend even stronger. Because people are always interested in what's forbidden, what's unattainable. Brando's lost film has become one of the most curious projects in cinema history, precisely for this reason. Every year at some film festivals, at some special screenings, it's debated whether this film will ever surface. But so far, no one has been able to give a definitive answer. Now, as we come to the end of this story, I want to ask you a question. If you were in this position, would you show this film? Would you fulfill Brando's wish and reveal the truth? Or would you hide the film and allow some secrets to remain buried forever? This isn't an easy decision, because both sides have strong arguments. On one side, there's artistic freedom and freedom of expression. As an artist, Brando had the right to tell his own story, and if this story exposed wrongs in Hollywood, maybe it needed to be shown. Maybe this film could have led to others raising their voices, encouraged people who experienced similar things. Maybe this was a necessary reckoning. On the other side, there's privacy and responsibility. The film's content wasn't just Brando's own story but also the story of others, and some of these people might not have wanted this story to be told. Moreover, showing the film could have only led to scandal and created chaos without creating real change. Maybe some things really should have been kept hidden, but I can tell you this, Brando's lost film isn't just a cinema piece. It's also a mirror of how Hollywood and the entertainment industry in general works, and this mirror often reflects unpleasant truths. Casting couch culture, abuse of power, sexual harassment, manipulation, these are just part of the story. The real issue is how such behaviors were normalized and protected. Brando fought against this system throughout his life. He rejected his Oscar, criticized Hollywood, adopted a different lifestyle, and in his final years, with this lost film, he tried to fight one last time. But this time, the system won. The film wasn't shown, the story was forgotten, and Brando's voice was silenced. However, every silenced voice is eventually heard again. Perhaps the film Tears and Shadows will surface one day. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 20 years. Maybe an archivist will find it on an old storage or digital platform. Maybe then, the world will be ready to watch this film. Maybe then, everything Brando wanted to say will finally be heard. But for now, this film remains just a legend, a treasure hidden in Hollywood's deepest shadows, curious but never attainable. And perhaps the real power of this film lies right here. Because sometimes, untold stories can be more powerful than told ones. Sometimes, silence can be more effective than the loudest scream. Marlon Brando died in 2004 at the age of 80. He left behind a magnificent filmography, countless fans, and many unsolved secrets. The film Tears and Shadows is perhaps the biggest of these secrets, and this secret is still out there somewhere, waiting in the dark. Maybe one day it will come to light. Maybe it will stay there forever. But one thing is certain. This story shows how Hollywood works, how truths are suppressed, and how artists are silenced. And this isn't just Brando's story. This is all of our story. Because there are always stories that need to be told, but cannot be told. There are always voices that need to be heard, but are silenced. Maybe Brando's real legacy isn't this lost film. Maybe the real legacy is his courage, honesty, and determination to never give up. Maybe the real legacy is the question he left us. How brave can you be to tell the truth? And when the truth is told, are you ready to listen to it? Until we find the answers to these questions, the film Tears and Shadows will continue to remain Hollywood's biggest secret, and Marlon Brando will be remembered as both a legend and a mystery, because he wasn't just an actor, he was a rebel, a truth seeker, and perhaps a visionary ahead of his time. Nobody knows whether the film will ever be shown, but this story reminds us of something important. Some truths, no matter how deeply buried, eventually surface. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day. And when that day comes, Brando's voice will be heard again. And maybe then, Hollywood will finally be ready to listen. What do you think? Should this film be shown, or should it remain hidden forever? Share your thoughts with me in the comments. And if you're curious about such secret stories, Hollywood's dark side, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Because this story is just the beginning. There are many more that Hollywood is hiding, and I will continue to share them all with you. That's all for now. See you in the next video.